Tonight on The ReidOut.
We will hold accountable anyone who is criminally responsible for attempting to interfere with the legitimate, lawful transfer of power from one administration to the next.
Attorney General Merrick Garland, in a rare interview, tells NBC's Lester Holt what might happen next in the DOJ's investigation of the January 6th insurrection. Speaking of which, the man who caused it all was back in Washington today, and many of the same Republican politicians who are running up that hill still came out to kiss his ring. Plus, the pain that Alex Jones inflicted on the families of the Sandy Hook massacre victims as he stands trial for defamation. And Dr. Anthony Fauci will be my guest on White House plans to get the monkeypox outbreak under control. Not a sentence I ever thought I would say. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jason Johnson in tonight for Joy Reid. We begin the ReidOut tonight with signs the Justice Department is widening its investigation into January 6th and the efforts to overturn the election. In an exclusive interview today with NBC's Lester Holt, Attorney General Merrick Garland said the department's investigation is moving at an unprecedented speed, and he refuses to rule out prosecuting the twice impeached former president for his actions.
You said in no uncertain terms the other day that no one is above the law.
Yeah.
That said, the indictment of a former president, of perhaps candidate for president, would arguably tear the country apart. Is that your concern as you make your decision down the road here? Do you have to think about things like that?
Look, we pursue justice without fear or favor. We intend to hold anyone who was criminally responsible for the events surrounding January 6th, for any attempt to interfere with the lawful transfer of power from one administration to another, accountable. That's what we do. We don't pay any attention to other issues with respect to that.
Garland spoke with NBC News after new signs emerged that the DOJ is expanding its scope, looking beyond the attack on the Capitol and those involved in fake elector schemes. Although the Washington Post reports that on that front, that a grand jury sent subpoenas to 2 Arizona Republicans last month asking for communications relating to any effort, plan, or attempt to serve as an elector for the former president. Meanwhile, NBC News confirmed that Mark Short, chief of staff for former Vice President Mike Pence, appeared before a federal grand jury last week. According to multiple reports, Greg Jacob, Pence's former legal counsel, has also testified. Short is the highest ranking former White House official known, that we know of, to have testified before the grand jury. He was with Pence at the Capitol during the insurrection and testified before the House Select Committee in January. Short confirmed his grand jury appearance in an interview with ABC News.
I think that having the Capitol ransacked the way that it was, I think did present liability and danger, and I think the Secret Service did a phenomenal job that day. I think that the bigger risk, and despite the way perhaps it was characterized in the hearings last week, candidly, is that if the mob had gotten closer to the vice president, I do think there would have been a massacre in the Capitol that day.
You think? Meanwhile, there are new developments tonight relating to the Secret Service and text messages from the day of the insurrection that have been erased. 2 Democratic House Committee chairs, Carolyn Maloney of Oversight and Benny Thompson of Homeland Security, called for the Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security to recuse himself from the investigation into the erased text. In a letter to Inspector General Joseph Ghaffari, they note his, quote, failure to promptly notify Congress of crucial information in his investigation, adding that, quote, these omissions left Congress in the dark about key developments in this investigation and may have cost investigators precious time to capture relevant evidence. It's a lot. Joining me now is Congressman Eric Swalwell of California and Paul Butler, Georgetown law professor and a former federal prosecutor. I'm very happy to have you on, both of you on tonight. Congressman, I will start with you. I always think this is important when we talk about Merrick Garland. He doesn't give a lot of interviews. As a member of Congress, as someone who is involved and concerned, was sort of a direct target of the insurrection, how comforted were you by Merrick Garland's interview? Did he say things that bolster your confidence in the DOJ? Do you now feel safer? What was your general response to his interview today?
Very comforted. Good to see you in the chair, Jason, and hello, Paul. But first, let me just say that the concern has been, and perhaps this is why he did the interview, is that because Donald Trump was a former president, that he may be afforded, privileges that no other everyday suspect would receive. And what we want is for him to not be treated any better than any ordinary citizen, and to not be treated, of course, any worse. But the evidence is so overwhelming. It's a mountain of evidence now that the committee has put forward. All of the arrows point to Donald Trump inflaming, inciting, and then aiming that mob right at the Capitol to violently obstruct Congress from doing our job and to defraud every citizen who voted in the election from having their vote counted.
And Congressman, I want to follow up because I always want to ask this of any members. It's been almost a year and a half since the attack. And I know, look, I don't care if I worked at Kinko's or the post office or a grocery store. If I had been attacked at my job by an angry mob, I would be terrified of that ever possibly happening again. When you talk to members of Congress, when you guys are on your group chats, when you're having discussions, are members of Congress feeling comfortable with this investigation as employees of the state? We understand the legal arguments, but when you go to work every day, when you talk to your colleagues, are people like, yeah, okay, we think Merrick Garland's got this handled. I would hate to ever see that day again. Is there that level of comfort amongst your colleagues?
No, there's no comfort at all. In fact, for the first time ever last week, I had to use a weapons screening technology at a town hall because of the overwhelming amount of threats that have come to our office and my staff. And the threats parrot the language that Donald Trump and others use. I got out of my car yesterday with an aide, and a gentleman is a polite way of referring to this person, stormed at me and started screaming that the election was stolen and that I was a liar. I mean, the rhetoric that we're seeing from America's elected leaders, people running for office, people who are, colleagues of mine in this building just over my shoulder who are holding assault rifles and telling Joe Biden, I dare you to come and take this from me. People who are threatening to kill Speaker Pelosi. People who are making animated videos where they depict themselves killing Joe Biden. Candidates for the Senate who are saying they're going to go hunting, holding firearms for rhinos, Republicans in names only. This is inspiring the treason curious in America, where 1/3 now say they're ready to take up arms against their government. This is directly leading to that, and we saw that on January 6th. And that's why the work we have to do has to reflect that this is not looking back at an event that was in the past, but the plotters are at large, and the plotters through upcoming elections are seeking to be in charge.
And some of them are still very likely in the building. Paul, I want to play you some sound here. One of the things Merrick Garland said is that the DOJ is sort of laying out a roadmap. I want to get your thoughts on this on the other side.
The Justice Department has been doing the most wide-ranging investigation in its history, and the committee is doing an enormously wide-ranging investigation as well. It is inevitable that there will be things that they find before we have found them, and is inevitable that there will be things we find that they haven't found. But the Justice Department has, from the beginning, been moving urgently to learn everything we can about this period and to bring to justice everybody who's criminally responsible for interfering with the peaceful transfer of power from one administration to another, which is the fundamental element of our democracy.
So, Paul, if the January 6th committee is providing a roadmap, and I don't know if Merrick Garland, I don't know if he needs Waze or Google Maps or something, because the map seems pretty clear. I mean, Congressman Swalwell just said, we have a very, very clear map here. So what is it going to take for the DOJ to open up that app and follow the map through to the conclusion, or are they still sort of fumbling around in Google here? What's it going to take for them to finally take the steps that many of us feel that they should have taken months ago?
Jason, the Attorney General's statements to Lester Holt were a lot of wah, wah, wah. Merrick Garland was talking softly, but saying nothing new. That was on purpose. I think the Justice Department doesn't make statements about its investigations until it brings charges. But here's the tension. Prosecutors are not supposed to let politics influence their cases, but prosecutors keep up with the news. So they know that soon Trump will probably announce he's running for president, And if an indictment is handed down after that, that's going to give Trump more ammunition to say it's a political prosecution with Biden just trying to eliminate a political opponent. And you're right, the House panel has provided a roadmap to prosecuting Trump. There are different considerations in a criminal case than in a congressional investigation. But at some point, if Merrick Garland means it when he says that nobody is above the law, he needs to prove it by charging Donald Trump.